Wanderer. My name is Erika Dirau. This year we were going to commemorate the 250th anniversary of Captain James Cook's first Endeavour voyage. So through this video, we're not only commemorating Cook's first voyage, we are telling our story through the eyes of the Bama of the Endeavour River as a direct descendant of Waymburr Warra Bama, where Cook launched the Endeavour. I would like to welcome you to the Guugu Yimithirr people and the Guugu Yimithirr Guugu to the south. Waymburr is bordering by the Endeavour River, Yukubaja, in the south, and the Endeavour River, Waalambaal Birri, to the north of Cooktown.
Welcome to Waymburr!
Now run!
Hi, I'm Peter Scott, the Mayor of Cook Shire. Our shire is the biggest shire in Queensland, over 106,000 square kilometres, and we're very diverse. We take up 80% of Cape York. We've got incredible diversity in our geography, in our people, in our society, and Cooktown itself is probably the, if you like, the capital of Cook Shire. And here we are in Cooktown, underneath the shadows of Mount Cook, sitting on the Endeavour River. So there's a strong association with Captain Cook here. It was really the Cook coming to Cooktown 250 years ago that I guess kicked this place off. His ability as a cartographer and navigator is self-evident. The man was just brilliant in what he did. He was also a humanitarian. He made some wonderful scientific discoveries. Here in Cooktown, for example, the discovery of the kangaroo, over 200 botanical specimens, recording of Indigenous language. It's so important. And this has been recognised by Cooktown for over the last 60 years. We've been reenacting the association with Cook and the Bama in our famous Discovery Festival. And probably about 15 years ago, Uncle Eric Dirau, who's now passed, and Loretta, I should say Alberta and Loretta and a few others, John McDonald, they started reinterpreting, not reinterpreting, but I guess interpreting Cook's logs from a Bama perspective. Because we all know from the Europeans' perspective what he did and what he could do, but there was also so much information captured in those logs that gave the Bama people here an insight into how things were 250 years ago, and in fact how capable they were in interpreting their environment, in living in harmony with their environment, but also in the political nuances of getting over problems. We live in a very special place here in Cooktown. It's on sacred ground called Waymburr, and there was no blood allowed to be spilt in anger in Waymburr. And this goes back prehistory. So Cook landed in a special place, and he was very fortunate he did. But the outcome was that the association with the Bama people here was special. And it has recounted a story now that everybody in Cooktown is telling the same story now. That this was a wonderful interaction, a really positive interaction between the local Aboriginal people, the Europeans who came in. We've picked that up as a community, and we're saying it continues. We're still in Waymburr, we're building on that history, and it continues now. We're now two cultures, one people. We consider what's happened as far as our evolution goes in that last 250 years is not just economic, it's not just social, it's not just cultural, it's a combination of all of those. And you're going to be taken on a journey now of what happened back then. But as the Mayor of the Shire, I am just so proud of where we've come and the position we're taking as far as our interaction, our story goes. We are setting a standard for the rest of Australia as far as reconciliation goes. We've got good support from the federal government. There will be some great projects put in place here that will give Cooktown that very, very important point of difference for people to come up, not just to have a look at, to be involved in our culture, in our harmony, in our reconciliation, really living it in a true sense. So welcome to Cooktown, and welcome to 2021 Expo.
The Cooktown Re-enactment Association believe that the 250th anniversary of Cook's charting of the East Coast and his arrival at the Endeavour River is a significant part in our history, and as such we feel it's 2020 this year, so we decided we really have to share that story with you in at least this form, because COVID has prevented us from doing anything else. So with the assistance of Cook Shire Council, we were able to rejig one of our grants, and the money that we had left over from that we're utilising to present this video. So I really hope that you enjoy the story that we're about to present to you.
And also, please leave your comments after our video, because we would love to hear from you, and I hope we do enjoy it. In 2017, the Cooktown Re-enactment Association commissioned local artist Jane Dennis to paint a series of murals to outline some of the significant events that took place here in 1770 when Cook repaired his ship at the Endeavour River. Here we have a little book that we've made, that we featured the murals, and here we've got Jane Dennis, the artist, but this is a series, this is the murals that are on show, and it is through these murals that we are going to tell our story of the 48 days of Cook's visit here. And as you can see, we feature the European story, or the British story, and also the Guugu Yimithirr story as well. Important to this story is the oral history that has been told about our ancestors. Now, this history goes back to the time that we know, or that has been labelled the dream time. And it tells the story of our ancestors who, in the form as Milkandur, which is the masked plover, and Kalkarunkal, which is a wallaby or wallaroo, who travel from a westerly direction and travel to this location. Now, they would have lived here, but when their spirit died, when they died, their wawu, or their life force, travelled to the east. And according to the oral histories of Cook Yimithirr Warra people, they were in expectation of their ancestors returning. But it's not just a story of their ancestors returning, it also tells of how they would return and their appearance. And they believed that their ancestors would return, their skin would be white, and that they would come with a hand of plenty, and that they would hunger no more. So that was already part of the belief of the Guugu Yimithirr Warra people from this region.
The first mural depicts the east coast of Australia and Cook's track up the coast, starting at Point Hicks, where the first sighting of land was made. Although not directly attributed to the Endeavour River happenings, this mural tells a lot of background about what Cook did before he got here. He landed 13 times on the eastern Australian coastline. The first landing was in present-day New South Wales waters at Botany Bay, where he stayed for 8 days. The other 12 landings were in present-day Queensland waters. In addition to the 13 landings, Cook also named 120 other landmarks on the east coast, making a total of 133 places named or renamed by Cook in 1770. And it's significant to mention that he never named anything after himself. On the 29th of April, the first landing was at Botany Bay. The second landing was the 23rd of May at Bustard Bay, where the current town of 1770 is. The third landing is at Thirsty Sound. And Banks and Hicks went ashore at Cleveland Bay near Maggie Island on the 8th of June. On the 10th of June, Endeavour landed briefly in a bay north of Cape Grafton, which is near where Yarrabah is today. On the 10th of June, Endeavour struck the Great Barrier Reef on a clear moonlit night. The 17th of June was the day that Endeavour finally limped its way into the Endeavour River, and on the 5th of August 1770, Endeavour departed the Endeavour River. All the other landings were island landings, such as Lizard Island, Providential Channel, and finally Possession Island, where Cook took possession of the east coast of Australia in the name of King George III, and then there was one more landing on Booby Island in the Torres Strait before Cook left Australian waters, heading for a refit in Batavia. The second mural depicts Endeavour fast ashore upon a rock. She had hit the Great Barrier Reef. This one shows the crew trying to lighten the ship as much as they can to get her off the reef. I would like to introduce Captain Cook, who will give you the readings from his journal on this day.
11 June at 11 p.m. 1770. We had the advantage of a fine breeze and a clear moonlight night. Near 9 o'clock we deepened our water from 14 to 21 fathoms. But while we were at supper, it suddenly shored to 12, 10, and 8 fathoms within the space of a few minutes. But at the next cast of the lead, we had deep water again, and we concluded that we had gone over the tail of the shoals. But a few minutes before 11, water shallowed at once, and the ship struck and remained immovable, except by the heaving on the surge that beat her against the crags of the rock upon which she lay. We knew that we could not be very far from the shore. In this situation, all the sails were immediately taken in and the boat hoisted out and examined the depth of water round the ship. The vessel had been lifted over a ledge of the rock, and it lay in the hollow within it. Some places there was from 3 to 4 fathoms, and others not so many feet.
At nightfall, rocks and shoals were seen ahead. While we were at supper, she went over a bank of 7 or 8 fathom water, which she came upon very suddenly. This we concluded to be the tail of the shoals we had seen at sunset, and therefore went to be in perfect security. But scarce were we warm in our beds when we were called upon by the alarming news of the ship being fast ashore upon a rock, which she in a few moments convinced us of by beating very violently against the rocks. The officers, however, behaved with inimitable coolness, void of all hurry and confusion. A boat was got out in which the master went, and after soundings around the ship, found that she had run on a rock and consequently had a shoal of water all around her. All this time she continued to beat very much, so that we could hardly keep our legs upon the quarter-deck. By the light of the moon we could see her sheathing boards, etc., floating thick around about her. At 12, her false keel came away.
Evening of 11th of June, morning of the 12th of June. The ship lay with her head to the northeast and at a distance of about 30 years on the starboard side. The water deepened in that place. As soon as the long boat was out, we struck out yards in the topmast and carried out the stream anchor on the starboard bow. The casting anchor was carried out from the starboard quarter, and having taken ground, our utmost force was applied to the capstan. But to our great misfortune and disappointment, we could not move her. We had indeed some hope from the next tide that no time might be lost. 6 of our guns being all we had upon the deck, our iron and stone ballast, cast hoops, staves and oil jars, decayed stores and many other things were thrown overboard. While we were thus employed, day brake upon us, and we saw the land at about 8 leagues distance, without any islands in the intermediate space, upon which, if the ship should have gone to pieces, we might have been set ashore by the boats. 15th and 17th of June. During the rest of this day and the whole night it blew, too fresh for us to venture from our anchor. The gale continuing, we kept the station all of the 15th. On the 16th it was somewhat more moderate. We hauled the cable short with a design to get under sail, but were obliged to desist. We saw more fires upon the hills today, and with our glasses discovered 4 Indians going along the shore, who stopped and made 2 fires, but for what purpose it was impossible we should guess. The scurvy now began to make its appearance among us. These and among other circumstances embittered the delay which prevented our going ashore. In the morning of the 17th, though the wind was still fresh, we ventured to weigh and push in for the harbour, but in doing this we twice ran the ship aground. The first time she went off without any trouble, but the second time she struck fast. The tide was rising, and about 1 o'clock she floated. We soon warped her into the harbour and moored her alongside a steep beach to the south.
The fourth mural shows the careening place where Cook careened the Endeavour for repairs at the Endeavour River. On the 17th of June 1770, 86 men of His Majesty's bark Endeavour, along with their livestock of sheep, pigs, dogs, ducks, hens and the ship's goat, stepped ashore on the southern bank of what was to become named as Endeavour River, or Waalambaal Birri in Guugu Yimithirr. Tents were set up for the men who were showing the first signs of scurvy. Tupaya, the Tahitian prince, set to fishing and gathering and recovered quickly from his scurvy symptoms. The crew quickly set to work to repair the ship. Within the first 10 days they'd completed the necessary repairs, but adverse wind and tides further delayed the departure, and it would be 48 days, almost 7 weeks, before they were able to depart. Endeavour's crew were far from idle during their 7 weeks ashore. They occupied themselves with collecting foodstuffs such as fish, turtle and green vegetables. They found a freshwater stream vital to the health and well-being of the men. Many botanical specimens were collected and sketches and illustrations made, and the first meaningful contact with the Indigenous people of the land took place, including noting many of the language of the Guugu Yimithirr people. Endeavour River proved to be a safe haven for Captain Cook and his crew when they needed it most. Cook writes in his journal, "I went myself and buoyed the channel, which I found most suited to our needs, and there was nowhere in our entire voyage that would have afforded us the same comforts. Should the events that brought Cook to these lands not have occurred, Australia's history could well be very different to what we know and cherish today."
This map outlines the lands inhabited by the Guugu Yimithirr Warra speaking people. Now, it goes from the Annan River or Yukubacha in the south, north to the Genie River, and out west almost to the Waalambaal River to an area that they call the Battle Camp area, and of course the coastline in the east. Now within this area there are 32 clanlands, and where Cook chooses to set up his settlement and repair the boat is in the clanland of Waymburr. Now Waymburr lays between Yukubacha or the Annan River and the Endeavour River in the north, and it goes a little bit out west to the area that we call Poison Creek. It is here on that mouth of the river that he spends 48 days. Now the special thing about this clanland was that it was a place of neutrality, and as you can see on this map there are places named that were not connected to Waymburr, but they had an association with Waymburr because Waymburr was the neutral zone, and this was a place where people from around these areas could come. They could take part in initiations, in other ceremonies. Women came here to give birth. Resources were shared here. There was trading, but the most important thing about this area that it was a peaceful place, and the law dictated that there is no blood to be spilt on Waymburr.
Mural 5 is all about the botany that was collected here. Joseph Banks was a very rich and influential young man, setting off on his grand tour of Endeavour's first voyage around the world. He took with him his botanist friend, Dr. Daniel Solander, artist Sydney Parkinson, secretary and draftsman Dr. Herman Sporing, landscape artist Alexander Buchan, 4 servants and 2 dogs, a spaniel and a greyhound. He took a vast array of specimen jars, artist supplies, and all types of paraphernalia deemed necessary for this voyage of discovery. Banks also brought with him his own little boat, which he often took ashore whenever the ship was near land. The total cost of this personal venture was in the region of £10,000. Banks and Solander collected 325 species of plants at Endeavour River, only a small fraction of them previously known. In 7 weeks, at an unfavourable time of the year, the dry season, Banks and his team managed to collect over half of the species, 55%, known to the area today. The skills of artist Sydney Parkinson were vital to the success of Banks' botanical endeavours, and between them they're largely responsible for immortalising the voyage in print and bringing the amazing specimen collection back to England.
I'm sitting here at Bicentennial Park in Cooktown. This park contains some of the specimens of plants that Joseph Banks and Daniel Solander collected in 1770, and I'm going to show you some of those plants. For example, this tree that I'm sitting under is, in Guugu Yimithirr, we call it Dummin. 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 And it's a large tree that grows along coastal fringes. It has a large leaf, but the beauty of this tree for us as Indigenous people, it has a nut. And when the nut matures, it becomes fibrous. And you can crack these nuts with an object like a rock, and inside is an almond-shaped fruit. Very nice to eat, a very nice snack food. I'm standing in the Endeavour National Park, and of all the species that Joseph Banks and Daniel Solander collected here in Australia, he only named one species after himself, and that was the species of Banksia. And here I am holding the species that he collected here at the Endeavour River, the Banksia dentata. The flower of this plant is a beautiful yellow flower, yellow or orange flower. Aboriginal people use the flower as a source of honey. It was either eaten off the leaves or the flower was dipped in water to make a sweet drink. When the flower had wilted, it left a candle, such as this one. This candle was often dipped in oil and set alight as a form of lighting. A very, very useful plant.
Mural 6 shows the mysterious animal that was encountered at the Endeavour River, which they believed looked like a greyhound or a gerbil. They couldn't describe it, but it was really a leaping quadruped. Sketches by Sydney Parkinson during the time spent at the Endeavour River unmistakably depict the iconic Australian native kangaroo. In this artwork is also shown depictions of the sketches Parkinson took of the dingo and Banksia seen at the Endeavour River, the Banksia dentata. What Cook and his men heard as kangaroo was actually kangaroo, as spoken by the Guugu Yimithirr Bama men. Encounters with kangaroo during the 48-day stay provided many significant firsts for the visiting explorers to report back to England and the world. The kangaroo was first sighted by Europeans here. It was sketched and described by naturalists. It was named from the interpretation of local Guugu Yimithirr language. The kangaroo was also shot by Lieutenant Cook. The kangaroo was cooked and eaten by Europeans for the first time. Upon tasting the animal, Cook and his officers declared the meal to be fine fare.
Saturday, 23rd June. The people who went over the river saw the animal again and described him much in the same manner as yesterday. Monday, 25th June. In gathering plants today, I myself had the good fortune to see the beast, so much talked of. Though but imperfectly, he was not only like a greyhound in size and running, but had a long tail. As long as any greyhound's tail. What to liken him to, I could not tell. Nothing, certainly, that I have ever seen at all resembles him. Saturday, 7 July. First light, we set out in search of game. We walked many miles over the flats and saw 4 of the animals. We observed, much to our surprise, that instead of going upon all 4s, this animal went only upon 2 legs.
The next mural is of a crocodile and turtle. some zoological discoveries that were made by Banks at the Endeavour River. These discoveries had been pushed into the background for almost 250 years by Banks' botanical discoveries, but he also collected and recorded this by descriptions of numerous species of animals, birds, reptiles, insects, fish and shells. Both on the land and in the sea, Banks and his team had a plethora of new creatures to discover. 48 days ashore allowed the men more time than any other Australian landing to observe the wildlife over time and gain a greater knowledge of the species. Seen at the Endeavour River almost 250 years ago was the crocodile and turtle. Crocodiles were seen as dangerous and the crew kept their distance at all costs, where turtles were regarded as an excellent food source and many were caught and eaten. Other species seen here were the quoll, the dingo, the flying fox, and many other species.
Finally, on the 10th of July 1770, Bamangay initiated the first contact with Cook and the Endeavour crew. Banks writes in his journals that 4 Indians were on the opposite shore. 2 of them were in a canoe and they paddled towards the ship. They stopped at the distance of a musket shot. They were talking and shouting and often holding up their lances to show that they had weapons should ill will be shown towards them. As the 2 men paddled the canoe closer to the Endeavour, gifts of cloth, nails, paper and beads are thrown over the side into the canoe. Our bummers show very little interest in these gifts, but quite accidentally a small fish is thrown to them, and in this fish they showed the greatest joy imaginable. The 2 men returned to the North Shore, they joined the other 2 men, and then they disappeared out of sight. Banks and Parkinson not only describe the physical look of the Guugu Yimithirr men who come over to the camp, they also take notice of the red and white pigment that adorns their body. They also observe the raised scars on their chest. They notice the nose piercings, the ear piercings, and also the other adornments that adorn their body. From these descriptions by Banks and Parkinson, I am certain that these men who have come over to the settlement are fully initiated Guugu Yimithirr Warra men. And they have been especially chosen for this task so that they could be certain of the identity of these strangers who have visited these shores. On the 18th of July, for the first time, the Guugu Yimithirr Warra men go on board the Endeavour. They are not really happy by what they see on board, for on the deck there are 12 to 13 large turtles. They soon leave the ship, but the next day 10 or 11 men return to the Endeavour. They leave their spears with the young boy before boarding the ship. 2 men attempt to throw 2 turtles overboard, but they are soon stopped, and the others are stopped from approaching the turtle. Why are the men so angry over these turtles? Well, for a society that relied on the resources from the land and from the sea, these turtles are a valuable resource. For the Guugu Yimithirr only took what was needed. All the turtles are female and they have been taken from a reef that was shared
by the clans from around the Endeavour River. And they also represented several generations of future breeding. So what can the men do to prohibit any further violations of their law? Well, as soon as they reach land, one of the men sees the campfire, he runs over to the campfire, he takes a fire stick and he puts all the grass on fire. The fire is burning quickly and furiously. But fortunately for Cook, the settlement has been dismantled and reloaded back onto the Endeavour. And the only thing that is harmed is a small suckling pig. The man with the fire stick soon runs to the area where the crew are busily washing the laundry. They have on the lawn their nets and linen drying in the sun. And he tries to put that area on fire as well. The Endeavour crewmen are busily trying to put out the fire. Cook calls for a musket and some small shots, and bang, he fires at who he calls the troublemaker. His friends return to pick him up. They come with their spears raised, but as soon as they see the muskets aimed at them, they drop their spears, they grab their mate, and they soon disappear into the scrub. Cook could not see them, but he can hear them talking as they are walking along the foreshore. He writes that they followed them about a mile from the settlement until they came to a rocky output. Cook and those who are with him, they sit on a rock, and not far, about 100 yards away, sit the Guugu Yimithirr men. And what happens next is quite extraordinary. Out of the bush comes what he describes as a little old man. This little old man is a Waymburr Warra elder, and it is his responsibility to stop any further conflict or the unintentional spilling of blood on his bupu. So he comes forward to Cook. He carries with him a spear that has the head broken, and as he is walking towards Cook, he takes sweat from under his armpits. He blows it in the air, and he continues to walk towards Cook. He utters some words. Cook does not understand what he is saying, but he certainly understands the intentions of this little old man, of this Waymburr Warra elder. As he comes closer to Cook, he offers this broken spear to Cook, and in return, Cook gives back the spears that they have picked up along the way. He is to write in his journals that this reconciled everything. Soon, Cook returns to the Endeavour. He is followed by a larger group of Guugu Yimithirr Warra men. They are invited on board, but they refuse. They sit on the shore for some time. Then they leave, and they never come back. That night, Joseph Banks writes in his journals that all the hills around the Endeavour mouth has been set on fire, and he says that it made a beautiful sight. But we know that the setting of fire was in fact cleansing the land of any evil spirits that may have been left on their land. Finally, on the 4th of August, the Endeavour sails out of Waalambaal Birri. Just listen to what Cook later wrote in his journals. In his own words, he says,
Saturday, 4th of August, at 5 o'clock we made several attempts to leave the harbour, and about 7 we got once more under sail, and was followed by the sea breeze from southeast to south, with which we stood off to sea east by north, having pinnace ahead, which was ordered to keep sounding continually. The yawl had been sent to the turtle bank to take up the net which had been left there, but as the wind freshened, we got out before her. A little before noon we anchored 15 fathoms of water with a sandy bottom. When we were at anchor, the harbour from which we sailed bore south 70 west, distance about 5 leagues. The northmost point of the main in sight, which I named Cape Bedford, to the harbour which we had now left, I gave the name Endeavour River. They may appear to some to be the most wretched people upon the earth, but in reality they are far happier than we Europeans, being wholly and unacquainted not only with the superfluous, but the necessary conveniences so much sought after in Europe. They are happy in not knowing the use of them. They live in a tranquility which is not disturbed by the inequality of condition. The earth and the sea of their own accord furnishes them with all things necessary for life. They covet not magnificent houses, household stuff. They live in a warm and fine climate and enjoy a very wholesome air, so that they have very little need of clothing. And this they seem to be fully sensible of. Our cloth they leave carelessly upon the beach and in the woods as a thing that they have no manner of use for. They seem to set no value upon anything we give them, nor will they ever part with anything of their own for any one article we offer them. This, in my opinion, argues that they think of themselves provided with all the necessities of life, and that they have no superfluities.